More on the situation in Syria. We're going to cross now to our guest on the program this hour, Dr. Haid, a Syrian columnist. He's also a senior consulting associate fellow at Chatham House. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm not sure if you just heard that report from France 24's James Andre, but it is increasingly sounding like the Assad regime's methods are kind of unmatched in their brutality, at least in recent times. Can you give us an idea more concretely and more detail about what life looked like under Bashar al-Assad?
Sure. Well, first of all, let me start by saying that what we are seeing out of the pictures we're seeing in those prisons and the people who are leaving those prisons and their status is just a visual confirmation of what we have basically known about those prisons and about Assad's violations for years and years. It was not a surprise that the regime would, it's not a surprise that the regime would torture people because we have heard stories since I was a kid of what would happen to those who would dare to not only question Assad personally or his regime, but even criticize as small things like, I don't know, the quality of the bread that is provided and all of that. So it was quite grim. It was people were not allowed to talk about anything related to what's happening in the country. It was difficult to really know who to trust because the regime managed to turn not only neighbors against neighbors, but also family members against one another. So it was really difficult to talk about anything because of the brutality of what might happen to anyone who would be perceived to be questioning the legitimacy of the regime and Assad himself.
You say, Dr. Haid, that this is just simply visual confirmation of what has been known for over a decade, really, since the start, more or less, of the Syrian civil war. Why do you think that the brutality of the al-Assad regime got so little attention? I'm not going to say from the outside world, because I know rights groups have been sounding the alarm about what's been happening for a very long time, but at least from world leaders. Why were they so absent?
Well, first of all, let me just say again that it did not start with Bashar al-Assad. We have been seeing reports about people who have been in jail for 30 and 40 years. So it started with his father, and Assad, the son, Bashar, only continued those practices. Now, when it comes to the violations and the scale of those violations and what the international community has sort of turned a blind eye. I think let's start with basically highlighting something that is more obvious than what's happening behind closed doors in those prisons. We're talking about basically how the regime used chemical weapons once and again against the Syrian people in different areas in Syria, and the international community did not do anything. So if you would imagine such a violation and an atrocity of such a scale, and the whole international community turned a blind eye, and you would imagine why the international community will turn a blind eye to what's happening inside those prisons. And the answer to why they did what they did, as in why they did not basically do more, I think because it was convenient to just pretend that they don't know about what's happening behind closed doors, or just complain that the situation is complicated. And the problem is not only turning a blind eye, the problem is that many countries have, after all of this and after using chemical weapons against the Syrian people, countries and governments have normalized with the regime, and that's not only in the region in the Middle East, but we have seen countries in Europe also reaching out to Assad to normalize with him as well.
Dr. Haid, I want to change gears now, because you have extensively looked into the governance model of the leading rebel group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS. And I'd like to know what you think they've succeeded, why do you think, rather, that they've succeeded in doing what other rebel groups have failed to do, which, of course, not only overthrow Bashar al-Assad, but at least for now, I know it's been less than a week, but at least for now, draw a sense of hope and optimism, both from Syrians and, to a lesser extent, from the international community.
I think there are different reasons. One of them is that because they have been more disciplined than other groups, they have their own also clear strategy, clear vision, and they have been able to really utilize the resources they have been able to generate from the areas they controlled in order to improve their skills, as well as invite others to join them in the fight against Assad, which is what started the current offensive and what led to the basically the toppling of the regime. Now, when it comes to why they managed to do, why people were not too sort of alarmed at the beginning, or at least until now, people are still hoping that the future will be different, because they have been giving sort of the right signals. They have been saying that we'll protect civilians, will protect minorities, and they have shown a high level of discipline when they seized areas. We did not see much looting or violations against civilians. Now, the issue is that people later on started now being concerned about what is happening right now, because what many thought that will be a transitional sort of period that will be led by different groups. It seems that now Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is the main group that is leading this phase, and the one that is forming the transitional body that will be making all the crucial decisions at this point.
Dr. Haid, unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but thank you very much for your time, for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.